September marks a fresh start, not just for students, but for all of us. It's a chance to reset, refocus, and reconnect with what matters. On My Legacy, few guests have captured that spirit better than the one and only Mel Robbins. Here is some of her best advice on overcoming procrastination, managing anxiety, and protecting your peace.
Mel, your career is rooted in reinvention and in resilience. You've also shared that you hit rock bottom, and that was your catalyst for change. Can you tell us about that?
I screwed up a lot of stuff. I mean, I had ADHD and dyslexia and was not diagnosed till I was 47. And when that happens to you, what you develop is anxiety. And so I had a chronic struggle with anxiety. As a young mom, when Sawyer was born, I had severe postpartum depression. I could barely even hold her for the first 3 months of her life because of the medication and the severity of what I was dealing with. And it impacted our relationship. And when I was 41 years old, I was sitting here listening to Sawyer talking about the radio show, and I was so thrilled that she has a wonderful memory of it, because that was during a moment in time where my life was falling apart. And when that happens to you as a parent, you do everything that you can to try to shield the reality of what's happening from your children, because that's not their burden to carry. And what was happening for us is my husband had gone into the restaurant business, and it was really good until it wasn't. And at the age of 41, with 3 kids under the age of 10, so, you know, I'm going to have to do the math. You were under 10 years old. We were $800,000 in debt and liens on the house. And I was rising to the moment like a dysfunctional human being. I was drinking myself into the ground. I was blaming everything on my husband, right? Because he tried to do this. And the simplest things, like getting out of bed, opening up bills, asking for help. I couldn't make myself do any of it. And I was the worst parent. I mean, there were times where she would come downstairs, and this I know you do remember, and she would find Chris and I asleep in the living room chair because we had passed out from bourbon, because we were trying to just suppress all the fear because it was just so overwhelming. I mean, when you can barely put gas in the tank and food on the table, I mean, that's a acute level of stress. And then you add on to it the sense that you're failing your kids and you're about to lose everything. And so for me, it was paralysis. And what happened is, you know, I have learned from people who are far smarter that research this. There's a saying in addiction treatment and psychiatry that people only get sober when being drunk is harder than facing the things that you're scared to face. And what I've also learned about myself and human beings in general is people only change when they're ready to change. And if somebody in your life is not changing or they're exhibiting challenging behavior, it's typically because they can't right now. There's some skill that's missing. There's hope that's missing. And for me, that was a big one. What was missing for me is this hope that anything that I did would actually matter. Because when your problems feel that big, like what happens is despair sets in. And it's very hard to motivate yourself when you feel like it's not going to matter anyway. And that's how I felt.
And just a follow-up question, and what did anxiety mean to you, and what does it mean to you today?
So anxiety then was this wave that would hit me and paralyze me. It was like being nervous about something, but then you can't turn the nerves off. And anxiety has a purpose. I mean, if you and I are driving down the road and a truck swerves in the lane, your body floods with adrenaline, your heart starts to race, and you immediately turn the wheel. That's anxiety. It's an alarm in your body. And it's playing an important role. It signals you that there's something that you need to pay attention to. Now, I didn't understand that. Nobody does. And so what I, of course, did is I would feel these stressed out feelings, and then I would go up in my head and I would start to cycle, well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? And when you do that, you make it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it becomes not a feeling, but it becomes the state in which you're going through life. Because what happened for me is that alarm would go off and I'd feel the wave of anxiety because I'm $800,000 in debt. I'm basically like feel like my life is about to implode. And so what do? I rot in bed. I stare at the ceiling. I think about all my problems. I then hit the snooze button, which, by the way, is making procrastination the first decision of your day. I mean, how are you going to win in life if your first decision is, I think I'll just avoid getting out of bed? And what happened is I would literally hit the snooze button 4 or 5 times in the morning, and then these guys would miss a bus. You probably don't remember this, but then I would, thank God, and then I would come racing out of the bedroom like a lunatic because they would be waking me up. Bus would be gone. Chris was a very smart man. He didn't want to be there when I woke up. I mean, Martin, right? And so...
No comment.
Smart man. He did good. And so, he didn't want to be there when I got up. And so they would be waking me up. And so now I'm yelling at them because I am disconnected from here because I don't understand what anxiety actually is and what it isn't. And I couldn't reconnect with myself. And that's also part of the neurology and the physiology of it. But you can reconnect to yourself. And so they would then miss a bus. Then that's just sent my whole day just down a complete wrong way. And so what happened is I just got this idea that maybe if I moved fast enough when the alarm rang, that I could move fast enough and beat the anxiety. That maybe if the alarm rang and I launched myself out of bed like a rocket ship, like literally like NASA, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, that if I launched myself, maybe I wouldn't be in that bed when the anxiety and the depression and the overwhelm hit. And it worked. And what it taught me, and this has been the thing that has really defined a lot of my career, is that you can build a skill in life where you learn to not let your emotions and fears about things dictate what you do. That you are not defined by how you feel. You are not defined by your emotion in the moment. I mean, if you really think about it, you can't be courageous without fear. You can't display confidence without self-doubt.
One of the things that I say to our daughter all the time is that courage is not the absence of fear. It's when you do it anyway.
Yes.
So it's not feeling when we're talking about her grandparents or we're talking about taking a test. It's not, Yolanda, not feeling it. That's not courage.
Right.
It's when we feel it and we do it anyway.
Yes.
I'm curious, though, what was that impetus to make you even to come up with the...
Okay.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. This is so it's like, okay, so I was sitting in my living room, and the kids had gone to bed, and Chris, again, smart man, nowhere to be found. And have you ever had a moment where you're giving yourself a pep talk? I mean, that is a low moment. It's one thing if you're giving me advice, but if you're having to talk to yourself, right? So I'm sitting there, I'm like, all right, that's it, Mel. Tomorrow morning, it's a new you. Tomorrow morning, you're calling your parents and you're telling them what's happening. Tomorrow morning, you're going to start exercising. Tomorrow morning, you got to look for a job.
How did it go?
Oh, well, I keep ticking off the list. And then I get to, and by God, tomorrow morning, when that alarm rings, woman, you're not going to lay there in bed like a human pot roast marinating in fear. You are going to get up and get those kids on that bus. And at that exact moment, a rocket ship shot across the television screen at the end of a commercial, and it gave me this harebrained idea. That's it. It must be a sign from God. Tomorrow morning, when the alarm rings, I'm just going to launch myself out of bed like a rocket ship. Now, I had 4 bourbon Manhattans that night, so that's probably, what also opened me up to it. But I actually do believe it was divine intervention. There is no other explanation because the idea is absurd. And the very next morning when the alarm rang, that's what I remembered. And I tried it, and it changed my life. And it led to this belief that you're one decision away from a different life. That you still have to do the work, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is going to help you push through the work. But, I remember when Soy turned to me, and she was in 8th grade, and she said, I'm going to go back to Cambodia. We had visited her grandmother, you were in 7th grade, rather. She was, as a widow, my husband's mom went over to Cambodia and start to volunteer. And we went over to visit her one Christmas. And when we were leaving, Sawyer was like, I'm going to go back. And I'm like, okay, well, that was a pretty big vacation. And, I don't think that's going to happen no, she's like, no, I'm going back next year and I'm going to teach in that school. And I was like, okay. And doubted her. But when I introduced her to you, this is a woman of conviction. And maybe it's also because of the distance, that whether it was because I was emotionally unavailable or when we were struggling and my career took off, like my ambition was largely about paying bills, largely about getting the kids back into town soccer, largely about restoring all of the savings that we had blown. And so I think it also created in Sawyer this, like, I can't rely on you anyway. And you can't tell me what to do because you're not around either, or you're not around emotionally. And so it created this, like, I can do this in her. And I'll be darned, she went to the principal of her school and she worked it out with them. And that next year, she went back and spent 2 months living in Cambodia and took a leave of absence from 8th grade, and it changed her life. And then she said, I'm going to go do it again.
Scrolling won't change your life, but subscribing just might. Tap that button and stay connected to conversations that count. Mel, your new book, The Let Them Theory, it encourages people to just let control go over other people's choices. And the part that I love is that you said it helped to heal and fortify your relationship with your daughter. Can you share both the theory and how it brought you closer together?
Absolutely. So the Let Them Theory is a simple mindset tool that helps you identify literally in a moment what's in your control and what's not in your control. And the way that you use it is very simple. If you're in a situation and some other person is stressing you out or upsetting you or offending you, or you're worried about them or they're treating you poorly, you literally say, let them. Because the number one thing in life that you will never, ever, ever, ever be able to control is another human being. You can't control what they think. You can't control what they do. You cannot control how they feel, period. And any psychologist will tell you that anytime that you spend trying to only makes you feel more stressed out, frustrated, and out of control. And the problem for all of us, and I didn't learn this till I was 54 years old. If I had known this way back when, I would literally not have been a walking red flag for most of my life. I would not have taken my stress out on my family. I would have been more peaceful and more powerful because I had no idea how much power I'd given to other people. And nobody does, because we don't understand how we're turning other people into the problem. And I've got very important and exciting information that's this. If you feel tired in life, if you are frustrated, if you're stuck, if you're stressed out, if you feel like you never have time for yourself, if you're just not as happy as you'd like to be, the problem isn't you. The problem is you're unknowingly giving power to other people. And you do it in 4 ways. You allow them to stress you out.
Yep.
You worry about and you manage what they're thinking. You navigate your life based on their moods and their opinions and their disappointment and their guilt and their expectations. And you paralyze yourself because you're chronically comparing yourself to them and telling yourself that if they're successful or they're this, then I can't have it. And it's simply not true. And what the Let Them Theory does is that any situation that you're in, and you're going to use it with your family more than anybody, because I think family teaches you how to love people you hate sometimes, right? You got to let them, because you're not going to change them. And what you will learn as you start to use this is people only change when they feel like changing. People only change when they're ready to change. People only change when they're ready to do the hard work to change. And the other piece that you have to embrace is that we think worrying about or pressuring or judging or pushing people to change motivates people to change. It's actually the opposite. If you look at the wiring of a human being, everybody has a fundamental need for control. When you're in control of what you're thinking about and your decisions and your future and the environment that you're in, you actually feel safe. And the problem is, if Martin's doing something that is worrying me, now his behavior is something I want to control. But Martin has the same need to control his life as I do. So when I start to push on Martin or suggest that Martin should do this or should do that, what does Martin do? Martin pushes back because he needs to be in control. And I didn't realize that I was creating so much unnecessary friction and frustration and distance with people in my life. I didn't realize how much time and energy I was losing because, let's just take a simple example. You're at the grocery store and there's 5 people in front of you and there's one cashier.
We've all been there.
Right?
Yes.
And immediately the stress rises up inside you. And then all of a sudden you get agitated. And then you start thinking, why are they not calling it? And then you're looking around and then you start thinking you can run the store better than anybody, right? And now let's just stop and actually really look at what this is. This is you giving power to something that you do not control. And when you do that, a number of things happen. Number one, did you notice as the stress goes up, your life force energy goes out? So you are allowing stupid, meaningless, all kinds of irritating people that are beneath you and not worth your time and energy. You are allowing it to exhaust you. And you don't have to. And the solution is just to say, let them. And immediately you feel peace. Because what you're doing is you're tapping into a tremendous, I feel like I've got everybody's ancestors with me because this is an application of Stoicism, of Buddhism, of radical acceptance, of detachment theory, of literally not reacting and staying in your peace. And then something interesting happens. You say the second part, which is let me. Let me remind myself that in any situation, I have power because there are 3 things I can control. I can control what I think about next. I can control what I do or I don't do because you can leave the supermarket. You could, if you never have time to talk to your friends, you could pick up the phone and call your friend or your grandma. You could practice meditation. You could say a prayer. If you say, let me, and remind yourself that you have power.
Love that.
Right?
Love
And so that's what it is.
Also, you said Stoic, all of these different ancestors. This also is you're bringing in the ancestor of Martin Luther King Jr. and the whole civil rights movement.
Yes.
Because I think what people also forget is that, they just see kind of one step of, civil disobedience is just one step in the process. But before, when you're talking about the lunch counters,
Yes.
you're talking about the freedom riders.
Yes.
They were they trained.
Yes.
They didn't just go and
Be non-reactive.
was,
Yes.
and it was a lot of what exactly that you're talking about, and let them.
And-
This is they're gonna do this.
Yes.
I choose how then I will respond to that. And what I also think is important is it is training.
Yes. It is training.
It is, you have to think about it and you have to.
Yes. It is discipline. And here's the other thing it is. Because a lot of people hear this and then they'll say, wait, you're just allowing people to walk all over you? You're allowing people to abuse you? And I'm like, oh, no, it's the opposite because you're actually allowing it now.
Yeah.
When you say let them, it's almost like you're allowing it without allowing it because you're saying, I see the reality here and I see that I can't control this. And so I choose my response because I know I do have power. And oftentimes the best response is no response. The best response is peace. And we give too much energy and too much fear into things we can't control. And in doing so, we blind ourselves to the fact that you always have control. And, I whether you're talking about a family dynamic or you're talking about a community or you're talking about a world at large, I find it just so sad and fascinating that we always let the most challenging and toxic behavior seem to get all the power. But I actually think the opposite is true. I believe that the person that is peaceful, I believe that the person that understands their power, I believe the person who actually constantly reminds themselves, wait a minute, I have power here because I have power over my thoughts. I have power over my actions. I have power over how I allow my emotions to rise and fall. And it's inside that power that any single person can change something for the better. And, that's what,
Because you're responding and not reacting.
yes,
And responding is when you come from a place of power.
yes. And it's also how you take personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Let's talk about responsibility, because the word responsibility is just the ability to respond. And everybody has that. And so when you really remind yourself of that, now you can be the person that changes everything, because it just takes one person to change the energy and dynamic in a family. It takes one person who cares enough to change the politics in a country. It takes one person to just shift everything. And if you don't like where you're at, or you don't like where your family's at, or you don't like something in a relationship, or you don't like something in the world at large, that one person is you. And as long as you give your time and energy, and you give other people power, their opinions, all of it, none of which you can control, you are not present to the power you actually have, and the time and the energy that you need to create the change that you're capable of changing.
Thank you for joining us. New episodes drop every Wednesday with bonus content every Thursday. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss a moment.